Hey everybody, here we are with Chapter 4, Settling Disputes, and this is getting more into what we think of law and justice, right? Cops and courts and judges and all those good things, well, kind of and not quite yet. But we will get to that, I promise. Settling disputes, this is, again, this sort of first unit is just a basic overview. So, how do we settle disputes? And what are disputes? Well, disputes are simply disagreements between people. And I know you've had a dispute with someone, your best friend, your parents, your guardians, for your siblings. For me, my sister and I used to have disputes like you would not believe. We used to get in arguments all the time. And Chapter 4 really deals with sort of a basic overview of how do we settle these disputes? How do we go about solving our problems, settling our disagreements with each other without having to get into a fight? Okay? And in some cases, if we get into a fight, how do we solve those? So there are five major ways in which we solve disputes amongst people. They are an informal talk with each other, they are negotiation, mediation, arbitration, and court action. The last one is the most severe, and it's the one that we want to try to avoid whenever we can. If there are ways to do it, first of all, it's cheaper, it works out better, and generally you come out of a court action with more satisfaction, okay? You feel better. Court actions are dirty, and both sides a lot of the times feel like they sort of got, excuse my language, screwed over in a court action. No one's always happy. So let's look at informal talk here. Informal talk is the easiest way to solve a dispute, okay? It's the straightforward, I got a problem with you, you and I are just going to sit down and talk about it, okay? If you're going to use the informal talk, it may be you're passing each other, you and your friend are passing each other in the hallway, and you've had a little tiff over something, and you just stop each other real quick and say, hey, look, let's get through this. You always want to make sure if you're going to use the informal method that you listen to the other person, okay? And that's the key thing in solving any dispute, is you need to listen to the other side. Okay? A lot of the times disputes we have are really minor in nature, and once you listen to the other side, both groups can come to the realization that is what we're arguing about really that important, okay? So listen to the other side. Do not yell, stay calm, okay? Everybody has multiple viewpoints of anything that happens. Everybody's opinion in some degree is correct. So listen to that person, don't yell at them, and stay calm. And in the end, you're probably going to have a compromise to solve the solution. Be willing to compromise. Be willing to work it out. If you're not willing to work out your problem, if you're not willing to work out your dispute, guess what? You're not going to solve your dispute. You're not going to solve your problem. Informal is the easiest, and in a lot of times it's the best. It can also be the hardest, because sometimes it may admit that you were. It may be having to admit that you were wrong and that you were at fault for whatever happens. But if you can, try with informal talk before you go to any of these other methods. The next way is negotiation, and this is very similar to an informal talk. It's just structured more, okay? And it's more formal than just a quick passing. This is where two people would sit down and go through a sort of a detailed step-by-step process of explaining what their problem is. My neighbor and I are having a dispute over where the fence is, and we're just getting angry with each other. And so what we do is we sit down at a neutral location, and I describe my issue with where the fence is, and he describes his issue with where the fence is. And what we try to do is we try to find a solution that's acceptable to each of us. I think the fence is, a foot over on my property. He thinks that's his property. What's our solution? Maybe the solution is we hire a surveyor to come out and determine exactly where the fence is. That way, instead of having to fuss about it, we can solve the solution. You can hire somebody to do this for you. Okay, there are professional negotiators out there all the time that will be glad to charge you lots of money for solving your dispute. Okay, sometimes disputes are of a nature that you have to have some professional to do it. Generally, a negotiation involves a compromise. Okay, let's say that it's not a fence line on my property, but that he has a floodlight in his backyard because he wants to have light when he comes home at night, and that light shines straight into my bedroom. Okay, and I don't like it. I want him to take it down. And we've been yelling at each other back and forth for 2 or 3 weeks now over this thing. We sit down, and the solution that we come to is that he puts a shield up that's going to keep the light from coming into my house. Or he pays for me to have blackout blinds, so that way I can get darkness. He gets his light. I get to be able to sleep in peace without having, it look like daylight, middle of noon in Times Square where there's sun everywhere, So we come to a compromise. Remember, compromises are agreements in which you don't get exactly what you want. You're going to have to give a little something. But that's a negotiation. Also very short, very sweet, very simple. Or can be short, sweet, and simple. So there's 3 phases in a negotiation. I went through one very quickly. The first phase is preparation. All parties, for a negotiation, for any type of these negotiation or informal, both sides have to be willing to solve the dispute. Okay, if you're mad and angry and upset, and the other party is trying to solve the problem, and you're just not hearing it, guess what? You're not going to solve the problem. It's not going to be solved. Okay, vice versa. If you want to get the problem over with, let's say you have a dispute with your friend at school and they think that you really wronged them, and man, they're mad at you, and they just see red anytime they see you. They don't want to listen to you. No matter what you do, you're not going to solve that problem. Both sides have to be willing to listen to each other and want to solve the issue. It's very important in that preparation phase that both sides define the issue as clearly as possible. Okay, identify the key issue. Well, he said, she said, no. What is the key element? What started all of this? Not what caused it, not what sparked the dispute, but what's the underlying issue there, okay? Recognize that your reason why there's a problem or there's a dispute is going to be different than the other person's reason that there's a dispute, okay? There are multiple viewpoints, there are multiple sides to every story, and yours is going to be different from theirs, okay? Your perspective is different from their perspective. The next part of preparation is at least attempt to look at it from the other person's side, okay? You might think you're right. You might know you're right in your own mind, but try to look at it from the other person's perspective. If you do that, you might be able to help solve the problem. The next phase is negotiation. You work together to identify the real issue, okay? And that means you're going to sit down with a person in between you. A lot of times it works like that. You're going to listen to what the other party has to say. They're going to listen to what you say. You're going to try to understand what they are saying, and you're going to ask questions. And then as a group, you're going to list possible solutions. What can we do? Both perfect for you, perfect for them, horrible for you, horrible for them, and everything in between. Okay, you want to list every possible solution that is reasonable, and that's the key thing. And be realistic about these solutions. And then the next one is be realistic, right? If I'm back to the fence, I don't want the fence up. My neighbor wants the fence up. It's on his property. Okay, he's got his fence 6 inches over on his side of the property line, and I hate the fence, and the fence, and it's causing an issue between us. Realistically, I can't do anything about that. So our solution may be that we work together to make the fence look good. It's a pretty fence. It's not something that's going to detract from our property value. Be realistic about the final solution. Do not believe that you're going to get your way all the time. That's just not realistic, okay? It's not going to happen. Agree on the solution. Both sides have to agree on it. And it helps to have that in writing, okay? To write that out. The final part is post-negotiation. Decide what to tell other people about your solution, okay? If there's a dispute, let's take it, two friends, you and your friend in school, you sit down over lunch, you work it out. What are you going to tell your other friends? What are you going to tell other people in the school about your dispute and how you resolved it? You don't want each side going out, you don't want you going out and telling people one thing and the other side saying something completely different. Because guess what? There's another dispute going to happen. It's another problem that's going to occur. The final part of a negotiation is being willing to discuss the issue again if other problems occur. If there are other things that creep up or pop up, be willing to talk, okay? And that's key to negotiation. Always be willing to talk. The next way that we can solve disputes is through arbitration. Now, arbitration is a lot more formal. And what you do in arbitration is agree to have an outside person listen to both sides and then make a decision. Okay? Arbitration is a binding decision. Okay? If you go through arbitration process, most of the time the arbitrator is like a judge. It could even be a judge, a lawyer. But they listen to each side of the story. They look at all the facts and they say, this is the solution that's going to work. This is how it comes out. And you know what? You have to do it. Okay? You're bound by arbitration. Okay? And so if you can avoid arbitration, if you can solve your problems through an informal talk, solve your problems before they get too bad, you're much better off there. Okay? So always try to talk it through. Arbitration is a binding process. Mediation is a lot like arbitration. You have both sides to come together. There's a neutral third party that sits down in the room with them. They talk through the problems with both sides. The mediator tries to get both sides to talk to each other. Mediators try to help come up with solution. It's that impartial third person. Okay, going back to school, you and your friend may have a fight, and your mediator is your teacher. You know, you go to a teacher and say, hey, can you help us with this real quick? Maybe it's a guidance counselor. They can't make you do anything. Okay, you can see there is that their second bullet point is they can not impose a decision. A mediator can suggest, hey, why don't you try this? You know, why don't you both try to do this? That person's neutral, and they're trying to come up with the best solution for you. And mediators should be someone that both sides agree upon. That's the other key part there. You should both be able to agree upon who the mediator is. The thing with mediators are their decisions are not binding. Either side can agree to walk away from, can say, I'm done with the mediation. I don't like that decision. That's not what I'm going to do. In which case, you're right back at square one. You're back in the same boat. The other one is court action, which we're actually going to cover in the next chapter, and that's the most formal of all of them, and probably the one that you're all most interested in. I'll talk to you later. Have a good day.